nice to see you again. It's been like 4 days. When you do like a podcast every day, just taking like 4 days off is generally not a great idea. But we did. Welcome. Nice to see you. Good to see everybody. Nice to be here. Of course, my name is Dean. We're waiting on Spenny, Spencer Rice. He's going to jump in a couple minutes, as well as James D. Fiore from Blackball the podcast. On your Tuesday, it's one of those days where it's like a long weekend into Tuesday. Everything happens. You got to do triage with content. So today we're going to talk a lot about a couple of different things. We're going to talk about hockey a little bit. We're going to get to a couple of little things when it comes to people shaking. A lot of shaking going on this weekend online, which is a lot of fun. And we're going to talk about disinformation. And I'm really, really excited today to bring this young man on the show. Courtesy of himself and the friends at Byline TV, which is a really cool project. This gentleman came to light a couple of years ago, and he was brave enough to come out and speak out against the disinformation machine because he was involved in it. And he's a bright guy, smart guy. He's got a great smile, comes to us from London, England. Gives me great pleasure. I've been chasing this guy. I almost feel like a stalker chasing this guy around. Please welcome to the program, Caolan Robertson, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you, Caolan. How are you?
How's it going?
Good. Did you like when I show up in your DMs every couple of months? Do you go, oh?
No. It's all good. I'm just busy running this thing, Byline.
Yeah.
So I'm just always like behind the camera now.
Do you like that? I mean, you're obviously, everybody knows who you are from a couple of different things. We'll get to them, but you were front of camera, you were a content producer. Now you're a content producer for Byline TV, which is very, very cool. And I want to get to that and talk about it. But what's that been like for you? And take us through Byline TV, because you've been at this for a few years now.
It's been amazing. I left very hard far right media. It was really, really difficult doing that. There was a huge period of just like guilt with a lot of it. I wanted to just disappear from the internet. I felt like I'd done all this damage to society, even by being a small cog in that whole machine. So I worked in pubs for, a whole year and thought I just never want to produce again, never want to make movies again or anything again to do with news. Even though I had good intentions, it was all just wrong. And then at some point, there's a newspaper called Byline Times that you can buy. It's a print newspaper, center left. They do a lot of work on disinformation. They did a huge amount of work working with the whistleblowers that blew up the Cambridge Analytica case, which is the Facebook stuff.
Steve Bannon Facebook. Cambridge Analytica, Steve Bannon Facebook bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the founder of Byline Times helped pull one of the whistleblowers out of vote leave, and so that's what that paper was. And I became friends with the founder of it, Peter Jukes, and he was talking to me at one point, and he was like, you've got all these skills, you've done all this stuff, you've got hundreds of millions of views working for all these terrible people on the far right. Why not use these amazing skills? Why not use all this stuff that you can do for something good, like to actually benefit society? You can do things about counter disinformation, about the opposite of the far right. You can do things about basically the opposite of what I was doing, exposing a lot of stuff. And I was like, I guess that makes sense, because at least it's restoring a little bit of balance to the world in terms of like what I put out before. At least I can do something directly to counter it. So I launched Byline TV, 2.5 years ago, and just have made hundreds of video reports, exposing the huge amount of Brexit lies that have been pushed and funneled into the country and society since 2016, lies in the government that they've put out, as well as lots of stuff in the far right. Exposed Tommy Robinson, that I worked with, who's a far right activist in the UK, and all of his personal finances and funding that were blown, and tax evasions, which was assisting in the court case against him. So I feel like I actively dismantled a lot of stuff before, but also created something that was an alternative to, I guess, going down the rabbit hole a few years ago. There wasn't proper news reporting fairly and balanced about all the crazy stuff that was going on in the world. So you end up with all these fringe crazy websites like Rebel News, and I didn't really have a choice of anything balanced on the other side. So I feel like I've helped build something on the other side. We just hit 100,000 subscribers, which is great. Wow. That actively is an alternative for people who want to watch news, but it's not mainstream, it's not fully corporate, and it's willing to really go hard and ask a lot of those questions. So that's kind of what it is, and it's been really successful, which is great. I'm really proud of it. And it feels like it's genuinely doing something good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is why you fascinate me, because you kind of know how the sausage is made on both sides, right? Like, and when I say both sides, I mean, the wrong side and then the right side, where you decided, after doing what you did for a couple of years, year and a half, I believe, where you presented YouTube videos. You were part of that Rebel News, InfoWars, alt-right content machine that put stuff out, which is how you came to me. It was this ridiculous CNN video that obviously we've used because we know the kind of people at Rebel News that operate in bad faith, that do terrible things, that like to get punched for money and tell you they're victims and start fundraisers, and we can get into that. I want to play the video real quick from CNN, and then we'll kind of get into it, because like you have a perspective that not many people have in terms of wanting to do something with the information that you would curate, but you were taken down that rabbit hole, which you mentioned, and I want to kind of get to how, and then we'll tie that into Byline TV. But this is the first time I saw Caolan. I thought this was super courageous, and I want to talk about the effect after. This is with Jim. No, I can't remember the guy's name. CNN. Let's watch it.
Joining us. So you specialize in getting these far-right clips to go viral. So what was the formula that you found worked best?
I was in the same chair.
Well, when I first started all this, I had been consuming
That's exactly
content
where
on YouTube for about 6 months. After the Orlando shooting, I remember I typed that theme into YouTube and was inundated with YouTube videos from Rebel Media and One American News Network type channels, and ended up going down that rabbit hole. I ended up becoming a correspondent for Rebel Media, of which I obtained millions of views. And my boss always told me, and the bosses of these other organizations always told me, that we should never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
So the video goes on significantly. It's about a minute and a half. It's just a snippet. I don't want to play it out of context, but that is the general consensus about what happens with these hard right outlets. It's James D. Fiore from Blackball the Podcast. Caolan, nice to see you, James. How did you start? Like, how do you go from this young go-getter that loves content, producing content, to getting sucked into that alt-right machine?
I wasn't even making content online when I started doing that stuff. I was working in a marketing job. I was working with the Gordon Ramsay group. It was pretty successful. Had like a really good life in London on my own. I would have been probably like 19 or something. Brexit happened. Well, it was happening. You had all of these very, very, turbulent political times. You had Trump like a few months later on the rise. And I wasn't someone that had ever really voted before or cared about politics or talked about politics, but I always knew I had politically some like leanings. Like I knew I was gay since I was 12. So I thought, well, we shouldn't have homophobia. We should have LGBT rights. Women shouldn't be treated badly. The kind of minimum things that people think should happen, but wasn't really politically aligned. But I remember the Orlando shooting happening in America. And it was America's Worst mass shooting at the time.
Yeah, Pulse
and
nightclub,
it was a gay nights club. Yeah, and I thought, well, what the hell's going on? And it was deeply disturbing to see that the worst mass shooting in America at the time was carried out by an Islamist. Apparently, at the time, I didn't know anything about Islam really. I'd never really talked about it. I'd always grown up in areas, rural Ireland and northern England, where there wasn't much Islam. There wasn't much conversation about Islam. So I went online to try and find answers. What is the Quran inspired? Why is America's Worst mass shooting against gay people? And why was it an Islamist? Is Islam incompatible with gay? I had all these questions.
Yeah.
And I typed those questions into YouTube, and a lot of the answers at the time were from Rebel News. It was Milo outside the site days after doing this gay kiss-off with Gavin McGuinness. It was Lawrence Southern. It was a lot of these big far-right personalities in America talking about it with Stefan Molyneux, going into detail. This is what it says in the Quran as to why a Muslim extremist would go into a nightclub and kill gay people. And you should be worried as a gay person in the West, because more of these people are coming into your country, and you're going to get targeted more. And this won't just be in Orlando, it's going to be in London, it's going to be in all these places. It was terrifying. And I didn't see anything on the other side of it, either recommended by YouTube or being created by the mainstream media. A lot of the conversations in the mainstream media were, or legacy media, it's difficult to talk about, ideology. Who knows, really? We're not going to look at the Quran. We're not going to look at that. When the Christchurch shooting happened, we looked at his manifesto in a different way and a more detailed way in the mainstream media than we did with that shooting. And that was a failure of the mainstream media and a failure for YouTube to recommend extreme content as if it was new. So I watched a lot of that stuff, got recommended more of it, used to listen to it on the way to work a lot, used to listen to it just like while I was cleaning the house and shit like that, and get recommended more of those videos. Got emails from YouTube, newsletters, watch this one, Nick Fuentes type people. I don't really think he was around at the time, but just more content like that. And Facebook becomes flooded with that. And I just become a little bit obsessed with it, really, because it was news that I'd never heard before, said in a really direct way. And it really spoke to me, especially with the fears of anti-LGBT hate crimes potentially on the rise, and this big ideology that all of them were selling their audience that, you know, gay people are going to be under attack in 10 years because Islamists are all coming over, and women are going to be under attack, and we're all going to be put into burqas, X, Y, Z. And it was believable to me, especially as a person in my late teens, to the point where I wanted to like be involved in that conversation. I remember when that time, it's probably like 2016, there were all these videos of like feminist rec compilations and like, not feminist rec, like all these kind of anti-SJW compilations that were on YouTube that were like millions of views. And I thought, God, no one's done that in Britain before. And we really need to have those conversations here because it's all happening in America, but, you know, the same issues are going to be happening here. And I really wanted to like be involved in that conversation. You know, apparently I believe free speech was, you know, under attack and all these talking points. So I made a little video going up to people in Trafalgar Square protesting Trump's inauguration, January 6, 2017. 16, yeah. And went viral, 1 million views overnight on YouTube. I didn't even have a YouTube channel before that day. It went completely crazy. And then Rebel emailed me and they were like, oh, we want you to be a correspondent. We've just hired this guy called Tommy Robinson. I didn't really know anything about Tommy Robinson. I just moved to the UK like a few years before that, wasn't engaged in politics.
Just out of the blue, they saw how many clicks you had and Rebel News called you and said, hey, we don't know anything about you, but we want you to work with us. Is that correct?
Basically, I